Started as soon as I see myself. And Julia, fabulous. So I'll get started. Welcome to our breakout room. I think we're going to be discussing grant funding tips, Julia Spiker and myself, but also really happy to go into other areas of investment as well. Really thrilled to have Julia with us. She's a absolute font of knowledge and experience, and she's someone who's giving a huge amount of herself to help others progress their ideas. So it's a real privilege to have Julia in the room. Thanks, Julia. Would you like to just quickly say, who are you?
Yeah, I'm really happy to, and certainly lovely to hear how you all introduce yourselves on the panel. So I am the eldest daughter. I'm a sister and recent wife. I'm an aunt to 6 and a fairy godmother to another 6. I have lived and grown up in southwest Queensland for the majority of my life and really call rural and regional Queensland and Australia my home, and that's where my heart lies. I'm a quite recent breast cancer survivor and have just had a clear mammogram and ultrasound today. So ladies, show me some love and book your mammograms, sisters. I have always been told that women can do everything, can do anything, and that was certainly the message I was told growing up. Living in rural areas and particularly with an agricultural background, that wasn't necessarily always my lived experience. That wasn't always what I saw. So the message and what we witnessed was sometimes quite different for me. And I think that's really propelled me into wanting both my personal and professional lives to really focus around the role that women play in the businesses, both agri-businesses and also businesses in rural communities, and equally the role that women play in leadership. And I have been beyond grateful to have role models in my life who have really supported me in my own journey around understanding my leadership role and where I can add value. I think and I guess the other part for me is, I think part of leadership is making sure that we're always really vulnerable and honest with where we're at. And I think certainly over my career, I've managed to be really successful with what I have done and what I've put my mind to. But that's always come with its own set of challenges, I guess. And certainly for me, that exists around mental health challenges and particularly around anxiety. And I think it's about how we're able to have some of those conversations as well. So what we can achieve, whilst also acknowledging that, we have different elements of ourselves that make up this beautiful picture of who we are. And I want to include that in my introduction. So I'm really happy to be here and have this conversation today.
Awesome, Julia. Thank you so much, and thanks for all that open and honesty. I think it's great when we can all relate as human beings. So, Julia and I thought we'd just say some very short words of hopefully wisdom around applying for grants, and then open up to questions. Feel free to use the chat. The chat is only visible from this room, so it'll just be for us. You can also apparently you can upvote questions, and if you'd like to come on stage to ask a question, then there come up instructions early. You have to click a button that says, I'd like to join the stage. So feel free to do that. So I'm going to hand over to you, Julia, first, for you to lead us through some of your tips around grant applications.
Yeah, great. And as Sarah said, we've got plenty of conversations we can have. So it'll be really great to get a few questions coming in this session so that we can add to that and really answer specifically what you want to have. Both Monica and Sarah have said I predominantly work in rural and regional space, and a big part of that is helping community organisations access resources. So I guess I often start work saying that in my opinion, there is more money around than there are good projects, and the challenge is actually making sure that firstly, your project is good and fundable, and secondly, that you're actually applying to the right places. So we have got a list of various websites and places where we can go. I can probably say more about some of the government stuff than Sarah can, but in terms of if people have never come across an organisation called Indigo Gold, then your one tip today is to sign up to their website. They send out monthly grants newsletters that are about 56 pages long. So I think there's a myth that there is not funding around, that there aren't grants available, and I would challenge that. I think part of it is making sure that the grants are linked to what you're wanting to do and that your project actually meets the criteria of that particular grant. So I think that would certainly be one of the things early on I would suggest people do. Check out Indigo Gold. Prue does a really great job, and there's no need for us to duplicate the work that she's already doing. She does all of the hard yards for us. Head there. And I think, my other comment for somebody who engages with people like, thanks, Janaki, like part of Sarah's team in government is we actually want to make contacts into government agencies. And I'll use Advanced Queensland as an example. Everything needs to be publicly made available, and people will, everything's on a website somewhere or something like that. But the difference between finding it online and having somebody say, hey, heads up, the next round of the such and such grant is going to be coming out in the next 48, 72 hours, that extra 48 hours for most of us, or the Julias of the world who scoot in at the final hour and hit submit, that can be gold. That can be worth thousands of dollars to us. That could be the difference between us getting a grant and not. And the thing about that is really looking at making friends with some of the people and having contacts with the grants agents and with the people that are attached to some of these decisions, so that we can be really made aware when things are actually happening. So my two areas is there's more money than there are good projects, and you want to be able to tap into some of that. And that we want to make friends with some of these government department people, because I'm pretty sure Sarah does not want unspent dollars sitting in grant opportunities. She wants it all to get out there. And part of that is making sure that people are connected in and know that these opportunities are there. So Sarah, I'll throw to you. What's your take on some of those, or what other ideas come to mind for you?
I absolutely agree. And I think, as someone who offers grants through government processes, you really want the really good ideas, and it's not always that the really, really good ideas know about the opportunities. So find out about those opportunities. I would actually build on something you said, Julia. you slipped in there. Put aside time. Don't leave it till the last minute. I remember I was a newly branded, newly minted CEO of a company. I'd been in there a couple of weeks, and we had to put this massive grant application in, involving hundreds of people who were going to be part of this panel thing. Anyway, we got it all ready. It took us a couple of weeks to get all our documents ready, and we thought we were allowing ourselves plenty of time. We gave ourselves 24 hours before the deadline to start uploading all the documents. And it got to the deadline, and we still hadn't uploaded them because the whole system had got so jammed because so many people were uploading so many documents. And you can imagine, as a new CEO, been in the job a few weeks, having to say to my board, oops, I think we might have missed a several $1 million opportunity here. Thank goodness the government realised that everyone was having the issue, so they kept it open for a bit longer. But that was a big lesson. Do not leave it till the last minute. Ask questions. Usually through the process, there's a way for you to ask questions in the grant when the grant's out. And those questions tend to get shared with everybody, and the answers shared with everybody. So remember, you can ask that. Check the details and consider them really, really carefully. When a grant, and this can be for VC as well, when it's clear what the reason for that grant is, be very, very clear you understand exactly what that is, and you address it with evidence. Because there'll be lots of people who can say, oh, I can do this, I can do that, but that all gets thrown out. And someone says, I can do that, and here's the evidence that I've done it. And it's a very competitive space. Customers. If you have any customers, make sure it's really clear that you've got customers. Or if you haven't got customers, make sure you're talking to prospective customers and you can get something from them, because it's always really good to see that route to market. And that will help you get ahead. Make it focused, short and punchy. And think about the pitching. So pitching, is it a big gap? Does anyone care? Will they pay? Can you make money? I mean, even if you're for impact, still good if you can make some money so you can increase your impact and keep going so you're sustainable. What's your route to market? What's the competition like? Any protection? Your impact measurement, how are you going to do that? What are you going to do with the money? And your team, as I said earlier on, people. It's so important about who the people are. So think about all those things when you're doing a grant, because it's still a pitch. It's just like you're in front of investors doing a pitch. The last two things are, one is, don't forget, it's not just governments. There's grants from a range of people, such as philanthropists, and there's quite a few of those going around. And lastly, if you're not successful, ask for feedback so you can get better for the next time. So Now,
Monica's got a question in there, Sarah, around how I evaluate which grants to apply for. So I'm happy to touch on that, and I put a little bit of a note in the chat. But the reality is, I will ring or I will research what sort of grants they've funded before, because as we love Sarah, but governments aren't often known as being innovative. So if they've funded something once and it was successful, generally they just keep funding the same thing over and over again in certain areas, maybe not the innovation department. So I will often do some research around their website, and if what I am looking for or what somebody's looking for to apply for has never been funded in the 17 rounds of such and such funding before, I will ring somebody and say, this is our project idea. I have not seen that this has been something you've funded in the past. Is that because this project's never been put in, or does it not really fit your square peg? Am I a round hole kind of a project? So I'll check in around that sort of stuff, because this is time consuming, and we do not want to be applying for projects if we don't think they've got a chance. So we make sure that we do the basics, read the selection criteria, make sure that our businesses are eligible to apply, make sure that the budget is right, that kind of thing. So I'll evaluate it based on what that particular, where we think we're applying for funding, has that been funded before? Sometimes we actually also need to make sure that it's money we're after, and that sounds really weird, I know, but sometimes you talk to people about about a project and they're not really 100. When you get to the end of it, you're like, I don't know, I don't understand why you need money for that. Like, I don't understand what that actually, what's your budget for that? So also thinking about, what is it that we're actually asking for dollars for, or do we just need a Sarah in our team who we can bounce ideas off, in which case that might be something that people can do in their day job. So we'll also want to look at what we're signing up for. Yeah, we don't want to be giving away our firstborn as part of this contract arrangement. You're aligning your business with the values of that state department or that federal government or that particular philanthropy group. So you need to also, I will also ask about, well, what do we want to give away in this? You know, there's IP issues, there's, are you happy for people's logos to be on here, whatever. So I'll also look at, well, what do we have to give to be able to receive this funding? And I think that's another thing that we kind of want to look at sometimes. Sarah, thoughts on that one?
Yeah, no, I'm actually thinking I might just go to some of these other questions. We've got a couple more in the Q&A here. So fixing many things on the world's to-do list often involves solutions and strategies so that they may not fit current grant structures and policies. Absolutely. So, you know, the big four, as they call themselves, tend to sidle up to government and then sort of try to frame what government should be doing. So, you know, get involved. When I'm hoping that soon we'll be able to have a lot more networking at the precinct. You know, and get to know the government people, but also start to feed in what you think some of the challenges are and what some of the things are that government needs to be solving. I'm a firm believer in ecosystems, so find out where the ecosystem connectivity happens. Again, I hope that'll be the precinct coming up, so that you can actually start to be mobilizing lots of people to think about how to come up with these solutions and talking to government about what's needed, which might not always be money. You know, realistically, there's not going to be a lot of money around at the moment. So think beyond the money. Also look at different things that government put up. It's not necessarily grants. So back at DFAT in the Innovation Exchange, we ran global challenges. So these were challenge. We said, for instance, how do we get plastics out of the ocean? So that there are challenges that governments will run all around the world. So even you don't need to be thinking about Queensland. You don't need to think just about Australia. There's these big challenges that are run by governments all around the world. So look out for those. So yeah, I hope that gives you a few ideas on that one. Have you got anything to add on that, Julia?
No, that sounds great.
Yeah. And then I did see Monica put there, how do you manage the psychology of having to wait? Yeah, look, it's just as frustrating for us as it probably isn't as frustrating for us as it is for you, but it is frustrating for us when we really want to get the money out the door and there's all sorts of things one has to do in government that make things a bit slower. So I would say, because I remember back in the day when I was a physics academic, I'd apply for a research grant in January and I wouldn't know until October or November whether I'd got it. Now, my approach was, well, I'm going to get on and do it anyway. So, you know, find out what you can do in the time that you're waiting. Don't wait for a grant. Just get on and do what it was that you were going to do.
And the other piece, if I can just add to that, is, again, I think we need to be planning for things, you know, what's on your wish list for next financial year, which is hard for some of our startups and some of our newer ventures. But the reality is we'll often say, what's on your 2021-22 financial year wish list? And that's actually what we need to start looking for now for grants, because by the time we get the grant, you'll be ready to start doing that work. So if you're looking for something to find for funding that you're wanting to do next week, it's a bit too late often, particularly the big chunky stuff, the big chunky grants that mean we can actually get some dollars. So you need to be looking further down the field.
Yeah. Julie, you also put in here that the same works for philanthropy models. What were you meaning there?
Oh, sorry, that was back on Mariel's area. So, you know, some of this stuff, if it doesn't quite fit government, they're not our only funders. We can actually go elsewhere, and that might be the case, and enter the world of SheEO, right? So the philanthropy and the angel investing side of things could be what we need there for a while.
Yeah. Any more last minutes? I think we've got about a minute left. Any last questions?
Only if we've got rural and remote people in the room, and maybe if you can just do a hand clap or one of the emojis if there's rural and remote people. If you've never come across the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal, FRRR, that would be another really good one to have. It's a philanthropic model. It's you know, there's a lot of Australian family funds in that. So FRRR would be another one. If you've not come across that before, I'd suggest getting on their newsletters, following them. They've got some really specific things: rural, remote, women, Indigenous, culture, art and culture. That's really a lot of the stuff that they support. So I think that could be a useful one.
Fantastic. We've got 30 seconds. And Mary, you've asked, why do governments love funding equipment more than people? I actually don't know the answer to that. I only know that certainly I'm not necessarily a government person, but in all the government roles I've had, we're absolutely funding people. I really want to help people to succeed. Okay, I think that we've got about 2 seconds left. So see you back there.